Hello there, it's Jay here from Jay's Vintage Junk, and today I thought we would have a look at the cassette deck from the Amstrad CPC 464 that I'm restoring. Now, to make things easier, I've actually taken the cassette deck out of the casing, so we've got the bare cassette deck on the bench here. And I'm going to show you how you can actually hook this up and work on it and test its functionality without actually having it in the computer, because you can just by linking a few wires out actually operate these as a standalone player, and you can even play an audio tape through them to check that they're working okay. And it's actually an advantage to be able to do that with these, because it's a right pain having to connect all the computer back up, test something, find something still not working, pull it all back out, do some more work on it, connect it all back up in the computer. As well, if you're suitably skilled, you can have it out on the bench like this here, work on it, play it, make sure everything's operational, service it all before you actually put it back in the computer. Now, there's two ways of connecting this thing up. Now, there's two different types of connector used on these Amstrad CPCs to connect the cassette deck up. Now, the one that we're working on at the moment is the last revision of these Amstrads, really, and it uses that kind of connector for the cassette connection onto the main board, onto the motherboard. Now, these aren't anywhere near as easy to work on as I've got a circuit board off the cassette deck off one of the earlier Amstrads here, and they use this type of connection. Now, these are a lot easier to work on, and what I'll show you how to do is how to connect this up to a power supply and to run a couple of bypass wires so this will operate. Oh, excuse me, I'll show you on this connector first, because this is what people are most likely to encounter. You don't see the later type quite so often, so I'll show you on this, and then I'll show you how I got around that problem on this particular deck I was working on. And basically what you need to do, you can ignore the red wire. Your black wire is your ground, so that needs to go to the ground on your power supply. The white wire is plus 5 volts DC, so you need a 5 volt DC power supply to do this. So that goes to ground, that goes to your 5 volts. Now, this is this next step you don't need if all you want to do is check that the fast forward, rewind and things like that work. If you want to actually be able to hear audio through it and test the amplifier, test the heads and things like that, you need this next wire. And what this next wire does, this next wire goes between the grey wire there and the green wire there. So all you need to do is shove a little bit of wire in between from pin 7, which is the grey wire there, onto pin 5, which is the green wire there. And all that does is take the audio that's coming out of the cassette player, which would normally go into the computer, and feeds it into the little audio amplifier in here, so it actually comes out of the speaker and bypasses the computer. The blue wire you don't need to do anything with. The yellow wire now, to actually get the cassette player to operate on the play button, what you need to do is take a connection from that yellow wire there and just ground it out. Just connect it to the ground wire there. That activates the relay there and allows the cassette player to actually function as though it's just as though you'd set it up to play a tape and it says press any key on the computer. When you press the key, basically all it does is it pulls that wire there to ground through a transistor. It just pulls that low, which activates that relay there, which then starts the tape player playing. So anyway, I'll fire this up for you now and show you actually working naked like this on the bench. So I'll show you with a just a standard it's the Trivial Pursuits tape that I got with the Amstrad. Actually, I'll just stick that in there because it doesn't matter if it gets damaged. And you can see here I've got my little bench power supply set up. That's set up to output 5 volts. It's only a tiny little thing. It only produces, I think it's about half an amp, but it's absolutely fine for this kind of work. So that's connected up like that. And what I've done on this instance, because I can't really use that connector there for what I want to do, all I've done, if we look on the back here, is I've just soldered, as you can see, I've soldered on where the wires that we need to have, that need to be bridged over and connected over, actually go. So we've got, you know, ground plus 5 volts, we've got the link wire, and this is the little remote wire to trigger the play function, and I'll show you that now. Obviously we've still got it connected up with the little speaker there, the power switch, the volume control, just as I've pulled it straight out of the Amstrad. So, right, let's try this. So let's try, just make sure we've got all this set up right. Everything's plugged in, is it? It's plugged in. That's our power. Oops. Oh, hang on, I have to make sure the power switch is on. There we go. I just connect that as though we're connecting the grounding out the remote wire. And as you can hear, we'll just rewind that. Stop that, play it. As you can hear, let's try the volume control. That's actually not sounding too bad, really. So that the actual unit seems to work quite nicely. I'll just stop that now, and obviously we can test the rest of the functions. That's rewind, stop, fast forward, stop. So we've just tried play. Play works. I think it's on a quiet bit there. Just try fast forwarding it. Yeah. So that works. Now what we can do now, I won't play this for very long because obviously it's copyrighted material, but just to show that you can actually play an audio tape in one of these. Doesn't sound very good, but it does work. So yeah, so we know that the basic functionality of this is okay now. What we're going to do next is we're going to give this a good clean and a good service. So we will start, if we look at these buttons along here, we'll switch off the power and we'll disconnect all this for now. I'm not going to take them wires off until I've finished servicing it, so I can actually test its full functionality when I've finished giving it a clean and a service before I put it back in the computer. But we'll be cleaning the computer case up before this goes back in anyway. First thing I'm going to do then is take off these buttons here so we can clean them. And the way we do that is there's a little circlip at that corner there. We pop that off, we can slide that rod out, and all these buttons will just easily pop out. So I get my little jeweler's screwdriver, we go in there like that. Oops, try not to slip. That's off. Make sure we don't lose the little clip, so that goes in the box there. Now when you're doing this you have to be super careful, because if we flip this over, we don't want to lose them 3 little springs there. We need to make sure we retain them 3 little springs, and when we take all this out, them springs are going to pop out. In fact, I think I'll take them springs out now so they don't ping away and we lose one of them. So we just lift them out. You've got to be incredibly careful with these. They are very fiddly little springs. They've got very little tension on them, so they're easy enough to get back in place when you are reassembling it, but press that one out like that. They may actually stay if I'm careful enough. I haven't thought about doing. I usually take these out completely, but I'm just wondering if I can lift them up and just perhaps put them behind there. Let's get that out. We'll see. If they all drop out, they're only going to drop on. That's why I like doing things like this on a piece of paper. At least until I recover this workbench, which is in the pipeline when I get time. Come out. Come out. There we are. So them 3 springs are out of the way. Now we can go back over onto this side. Right. So far so good, they haven't dropped out. Now what we need to do is carefully just ease out that bar and make sure we know which way they go. Record, play, rewind, fast forward, stop and pause. Because we don't want to put them all back in the wrong order. We gently slide that out like that. Now the buttons should just pop out like that. Okay, now you can now see the reason why I like to take these out to clean these tape decks. Look at all that horrible crud there. You can see where things have been dropped through it in the past. It's crusty, it's horrible. Yuck. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. What we will do first, we'll just slide that out of the way, up there. And what I've got here is some it's warmish water, it's not hot water, and it's got a little bit of household detergent in it. It's just, I'll name the brand, it's Star Drops, anything else would do really, but it's Star Drops household detergent, just a very mild solution of it. And what we will do is just dump them in the Star Drops, get them all covered over. Just like that. And while we do the next little bit, we will leave them in there to soak for a bit. Let's get the deck back in here. And the next thing really is just cleaning all this crud up. In fact, that's slightly moistened with a tiny little bit of Star Drops. And you can see how much crap's just coming off on this white piece of paper. Now what I'll do is we'll give that a clean with some of this, because it's actually got something that's been spilt through it. It's a liquid, it's like tea or coffee or whatever some horrible little child has spilt on their poor Amstrad back in the day. Let's get in there as much as we can. Get some clean cloth. So we don't want to get anything really wet. What we just want to do is just lift the dirt. So if we do have to use a liquid like that, we need to get it off as pretty damn quick really. We don't want to cause any rusting. But when it's that accumulated with crud, really, that is one of your best solutions to get it off. I mean, that there now is actually just marking to the plating. All the residue that was on top of there is now gone. So that's quite nice. That's cleaned that up nicely. Let us move on round and see where the rest needs to be cleaned. Now, we look down here at the heads. Round there is filthy, absolutely filthy. So what we will do, we need a cotton bud and some isopropyl, and we'll clean the heads. But as well as cleaning the heads, we're going to clean all round them as well. Get rid of all this fluff and muck and oxide off tapes and all the other stuff which really just coats these things after all these years. So we'll get in here with the isoprop. Well, I won't touch the play head just yet, the play record head. We'll get all the crud off first, and then we'll go back in with a clean bud to clean that up. Yeah. I mean, look at that already. That's horrible. That's really is manky. In fact, I think I'll be using another couple of cotton buds on this one. This really is a very dirty one. So let's get a little bit more isoprop on there, and we'll go onto the capstan, and we'll give the capstan a clean as well, because that picks up all the oxide off the tape. And if it's covered in, look at that there. If that's covered in oxide, it's not going to be as efficient at gripping the tape. So really, we need to get all that off. There's so much on there. I'm just actually going on with another clean cotton bud. Now that's better already. That's got a lot of the crud off there. Let's go back in here. Just make sure we can get as much off as we can. Just for the cosmetics as well as anything else, because it's cleaner you get it, the better, really. And it doesn't take a huge amount of time, as you can see. I mean, I'm doing all this in real time, so you can see exactly how long it takes to clean up one of these decks. Yeah, there we go. There's a bit more crud in there I want to get rid of. Oh dear me, excuse me. Let's get all that out of there. There we are. Now that is suitably cleaned up, really. Now what I am going to do, just get another cotton bud. I'm going to clean the play record head thoroughly. And the way we'll do that, we'll get some more isoprop on there. Give the head a nice rub down. Make sure we can get all the crap off it from over the years. In fact, actually, that's pretty clean. That's surprisingly clean, that one. I'm surprised with how dirty the rest of the deck was. Well, yeah, that's quite clean, that. I'm quite pleased with that. And it doesn't look overly worn. There's a little bit of wear on it when you look at it, but I've seen far worse that have still played absolutely perfectly, so I'm not too worried there. Give the record a quick clean over, not way near as important that, but seeing I'm in here, just get a little bit of that crud from out of there. There we are. That's quite nice. I'm quite happy with that now. That's quite clean. That belt's still okay. But what we will do is we will change the main drive belt on this as a matter of course. So I'll show you how to do that first. Now, first thing we need to do is just slacken off the circuit board there. So that's these two screws. We can also have a good inspect and a quick clean up underneath the board while we're doing this. That's the board out of the way, and we will have a quick clean up before we go any further. Just really quickly around here. It doesn't need a huge amount because this being the bottom of the deck, it doesn't get the dust that the top does when the lid's open, so it only needs a quick clean over. Just check around and make sure there's nothing looking untoward, which there doesn't appear to be. It all looks quite good. The grease is still good in there. There's not very many moving parts on one of these, so they are quite nice and easy to work on. But what we want to do is just change that belt for a new one. All we need to do is remove this screw here. Like that. Not lose it in the mechanism. Now, officially what you're meant to do, I think, is undo that screw there, take all that off, and there's little springs and bits that can pop off, and then you spend half an hour putting it all back together. What I do is I take the belt off like that, bring it round, and just very gently just ease that up so I can pop the belt under, lift it slightly, and there's the old belt out. Now let's get rid of that. And then I'm thinking, in here, yep, I have got a new belt for it right there. So just get that out of the packet. Okay, so there's our new belt. And all we do is, it's just a reversal of what we've just done. If we just pop it over there and lift that up slightly, pull it over. You get it right to the end there. I've got it caught that slightly. There we are. That's in. You need to go around that pulley there, and that's got plenty of tension in it. That's a nice new belt. And just make sure it's running true. Just make sure it's squared up, so it'll run a bit nicer. There we go. That's that back in. Replace this screw here. Like that, and there we go. That's the new belt in place in the player. And like I said, the rest of that looks all fine. The one thing I will just do is we've got two little contacts, one there, one there. Now we already know that they work okay because we've already run it through. But what we will do, just while we're in here, we take a little piece of paper, just fold it over like that, just fold it over again, so we're basically making a little shim like that. Then we take a bit of isopropyl, just dip a little bit of isopropyl on it, just let it soak in a second. Then all we do is we just put that between the contacts, just close the contacts up, and just gently give it a really gentle little rub like that. You don't want to be using emery paper or anything like that, just a little bit of paper moistened in a little bit of isopropyl is all you need. Pull it out, and as you can see there, it's just got the little bit of crud off the contacts inside. Now the next contacts that we need to take care of are for the them there. They're actually normally closed, they're only open when play is engaged. So we need to engage the play mechanism, which I think is that mechanism there. That has now opened them little contacts, so we will just slide that in between them contacts, and then we'll press the stop button, which is just shut them contacts again with the little piece of paper in between. Again, we can just give it a really gentle little rub backwards and forwards like that. Just clean the crud off the contacts, pull that out, and there we go. That's them contacts cleaned as well. So that's the belt replaced, all the contacts cleaned, any fluff or crud or anything pulled out of there, piece of hair removed. We can now put this board back in situ, like that. Put that screw back in there. Like that. So there we go, that's the new belt on. We're all happy in there, we've not lost any of them little springs yet. What we'll do is just stick that to one side for a second. In fact, we will move my paper, and we will just bring out the buttons which have been soaking since we did that. We just get them out of there. Get the old scrubbing brush, just give them another quick going over with a scrubbing brush. Well, old toothbrush, scrubbing brush. Find an old toothbrush works really well for things like this. Just get a bit of a lather up like that. Now, we're not expecting them to come up like new, because I mean things do yellow with age, but if we can just get the bits of paint off, which this will, you will believe how much just sticking it in a little bit of detergent like that will lift what's generally 9 times out of 10 just emulsion paint, because that's what these things seem to get covered in, is emulsion paint. Perhaps get your fingernail in if it's struggling, but yeah, that's come off there. On to the next one, and again, I will force you to watch all this, because like I say, I want to show you this in real time. This is how long it actually takes to do one of these cassette decks. It's not a huge amount of time really. I mean, if you've got more complex faults on it, yeah, but this just needed a clean. I think the reason it wasn't switching over to play in the first place, I did actually suspect that relay at one point, but I tested the relay before I got onto this. I think it was the contacts inside were probably a little bit gummed up, and literally just messing with it was enough to get it going again. Because if you remember, when I first tried that in the computer, it wouldn't spin up when you hit a key after play, and I really think the only reason was it was just a bit gummed up, and just messing with it got it going again. And as you saw when I cleaned them contacts, they were pretty cruddy in there. So yeah, you can see I don't know if you can see on the camera, but the water's actually changing colour here. It's going like probably a nicotine-y yellow colour. And that's the last one to clean. Yeah. So there we are. That's that is the buttons cleaned. We'll get a bit of kitchen paper. Let's see if we can do it. I'm doing this on shot. I don't know. We'll get them out of the water. Get that off the workbench before I tip it up and knock it everywhere. It wouldn't be the first time I've done something like that. And all we need to do is just get them dry, so we just get them in the paper, give them a scrunch up, just get the water off them. it won't do them any harm because it's only plastic, but we don't want to be putting them back on the actual tape unit while they're wet, so just give them a going over. Look at that, all the crud's come off the side of them. They've come up, I mean they're still a little yellowed on the actual things, but there's nothing I can really do about that. It is just yellowing of the print, I think. I've seen it on some I've still seen which are still nice and clean, but you see it a lot, that. I'm not worried about that. It was the crud down the side of the keys there which makes it look horrible. Just make sure they're nice and dry. You don't want any moisture inside. Just get in there like that with the towel. These are actually nice and dry. It helps, it's quite warm in here. I've got the heating on. Yeah, I'm happy with them. They're all nice and dry. So now what we need to do is put them back in the player. I'll just bring my piece of paper back because it makes it easier for me to, for one thing, it makes it easier for me to line it up on the camera, so I know you can see what I'm doing. So let's get that lined up there. We'll spin that back over like that, and we can start putting the keys back in. Now let's have a look here. We want pause first, so let's put the pause key back in like that. Then we want stop eject, so that one goes in next. What we can do, in fact no, what we will do, we'll get them all in and then we'll feed the rod back in. Then we want fast forward. So fast forward goes back in like that. Then obviously rewind. Then we want play. And last but not least, record. So there we go, that's all them back in. We then need to take the rod that we took out earlier. That's nice and clean. Sometimes these get a bit of rust and crud on them, and it's as well just to run a bit of emery paper or something just to get that off, but this one is still nice and shiny and clean. So all we need to do, if we start at this end and just start feeding it through the keys by keeping them lined up where they should be. Last key, and then back into the end there. Then we need that little circlet we took off earlier, which is that one there. Now there are special tools for inserting these, but if you're careful enough you can do it with a pair of pliers, which is what I do. This is where you see me fail horribly and it pings off across the room, never to be seen again. We just stick it on like that and give it a quick, let's try this, give it a quick push down. You know what I said about it pinging off into the room, never to be seen again? Fortunately I found it. Right, let's attempt number 2 to get that little bugger back on. I'll try holding it with my fingers this time. There we are. If you get it right, it's easy enough. That's back in there now. So that is all the keys back in the correct places and clean. They have no crud around the sides of them anymore, and I find that easier than cleaning them in situ, to be honest. Now back here, what we need to remember to do is put them springs back in place. So what we should do, if we get hold of them and just pop them round, and all they need to do is go underneath. They're just the returns for the springs, to give the springs, make sure the springs pop up where they need to. So we lift them up. This is also why I never chuck away, like even broken decks are worth keeping hold of, just for pinching bits like these. If you do a few of these computers, or you work on other similar kind of computers, like I said, the Sinclair Spectrum Plus 2s, the grey Plus 2s, certainly use exactly the same tape deck as this. So much so I've actually used bits off Plus 2 tape decks to fix Amstrad ones in the past, when I hadn't got the spare on a scrap Amstrad deck. I've seen a few Amstrads going around with Spectrum 128K tape counters on them, for example. You can tell because on the Amstrad they're black or grey, and on the Sinclair they're white numbers. That's the only difference, and they work perfectly. Right, so that is all the buttons back in. That's the head cleaned. That's a new belt on it. That is all the things seem to be working. We will just finally, we will fire this back up, just so I can prove to you that I haven't broken it, and it does still function okay. Let's get these wires so I can just rig it up to my my bench supply again. Let's connect that one there. Then we need the ground wire, which needs to be connected to wherever it's gone. There it is, that one. So that connects to that. Switch the power supply on. We can see we have rewind, fast forward, we can put a tape in, we can press play, and as you can see it doesn't play. We hit the remote like it would be if you did it on the computer, and as you can see it still works nicely, and hopefully it'll now work in the computer. Just switch that back off, stop that, take the tape out. So the last thing I need to do before this obviously goes back in the computer is just take off the wires that I connected on here. So if you had one of the older decks, one of the older Amstrads, you wouldn't have to do that. It's just because this is the later one, like I said, that it's not got quite the same connector, and it's not as easy to just shove wires in the end like the earlier one is. So we'll take that off there, and we'll take that off there. And as you can see with them that lot removed, it's back exactly as it was, and that is now ready to go back into the Amstrad computer. But it's not going back into the Amstrad computer straight away, because first thing we're going to do before that goes in this case is this is going to get stripped down. I'm going to strip the keyboard out, and we'll look at cleaning the keyboard up. And in fact we'll do that now, I think. Yeah, let's do that, tag that onto the end of this video. Let's get that out of the way and put that somewhere safe. And we'll get the deck, we'll get this in here. Let's see if we can just perhaps bring it up a little bit more so you can see a little bit more of it. As much as I can get in shot, that I'm afraid. But all we need to do is undo these big screws. I'm slightly off shot there, I know, I do apologise for that, but like I said, I've got the camera set up for doing this, not for doing the tape deck, not for doing this, but I thought, well, I've got you here, we'll take this out. So that is the one last screw? Yeah, one last screw. Oops, and don't knock the tripod. That's out. We can remove the keyboard. So that is going to be a separate video cleaning that up. It is pretty dirty. Like I said, it's fully functional, so we've got a couple of options on that. We will look at cleaning that keyboard up, just for the cosmetics, just because I want it absolutely spotless and perfect. And we will also clean this up. I will go through cleaning up these cases and getting this absolutely as pristine as we can. It should come up virtually like new. We should get all this paint off, like I just showed you on the keys. We'll get all this this cruddy paint off here. We'll get it all shined up. We'll see if we can get rid of any of the blemishes we can, and we'll get that really, really nice. But yeah, like I said, the main point of this video was to show what to do with the CPC tape deck, how to get that up and running again. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.